infrasonic, electronic, supersonic. If you're enjoying the music going on right now, that is Shibalba. And she is here today and is a brand new to the scene. And if you're interested, you can find her Instagram account as well. A very good, brand new musician doing a lot of OPZ work. And I'll tell you later. Welcome back to Piqued. And now we're going to go into Musicalfungus, and we'll have a little interview with him afterwards. So please and he is actually, this is his second time performing at Piqued. He actually performed back in April at the very first show we ever did. So I want to please give a big hand to Musicalfungus and coming back and playing another set for us. Musicalfungus, everybody. Oh, is it off? Yeah, the button. It's starting up. Hold on a second. Oh, it's sorry. Yeah.
Sweet.
Chris, thanks again for coming out and playing Piqued.
Of course, anytime. I love it.
That was a great set.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, now it's a little different than what you had back in April.
Yeah, I try and play something different every time. Even though the setup I use is essentially the same, I use the same routing every time. Everything else that I'm doing in real time is all improvised off the top of my head. So I try and make it as different as possible.
I noticed you had a full skiff that's just mutable instruments.
I did. So I was actually playing between two systems. The make noise system that's down here and the modules that are in this box were essentially the first half. And the second half, I transitioned into just this top skiff, which is, all mutable instruments modules.
That was pretty neat. I don't think I've seen anyone do a nice set of just all mutable instruments like that before.
For sure, yeah. I've been, it's been a little bit of an obsession of mine recently, is mutable instruments modules. I've just fallen in love with the sound recently.
I can understand that. Mutable Instruments is one of those companies that makes really unique, beautiful modules.
Yes, they do.
I also noticed, tell me how many maths you have in there?
2, but I want 3.
I think you once told me that you could probably play a set with just a few of those.
Yeah, give me 4 maths and I'll play for like an hour. Yeah, VCAs, filters, complex oscillator, you can do anything with those modules. So.
Tell me about the concept you had when you were prepping for tonight.
I didn't really prep. Like I said, I try and improvise everything, so my routing and my cabling is essentially the same. But other than that, the only preparation I did was just my daily practice. I find that's the best way to become a good improviser, is to just practice over and over and over and over. Learn all the little nooks and crannies and little ins and outs that you can take throughout your set, and you can just explore this vast realm of, unexplored territory just through improvisation.
That's awesome. Do you use any samples at all, or is it all just from the modules?
It's all just modules, yeah. No, I probably, as soon as I got into modular, I realized I don't like playing with samples. So I used to mess around with samples in Ableton and things like that, but in the modular world, I really like to stay, I don't even, other than mutable instruments, I really like to stick with analog modules. I don't even really prefer digital ones. So.
You've got a really good organic melody that you have to everything I've ever heard you do.
For sure. That's definitely the basis of everything I do, is the melody. I always try and keep some sort of kind of bubbly, ongoing melody going throughout everything. Even if I venture off into noise, like I did a little bit today, I try and kind of poke that melody through the noise every once in a while. So.
I definitely saw it as a transition from one section to the other with using the noise coming in
that was
like a bridge.
That was the herb verb, just self-oscillating on itself. If you turn the feedback all the way up, it'll just oscillate. So I use that to both transition between the two systems and also end the set with just kind of a wash of noise.
Using noise is actually something I haven't heard you use before very much.
I don't. Today was actually probably the noisiest set I've done, and I didn't have something plugged in the first half, so it was very distorted. It was very crunchy.
It was good, man. I really enjoyed it.
Sure, thank you. But yeah, noise is actually really awesome if you utilize it correctly. Noise is every single audible frequency all being played at once. So if you filter noise correctly, you can really get any sound you want out of noise. A lot of people think noise is just but inside that static, there's every single available audible frequency that we can manipulate using control voltages and filters and amplitude modulation and all sorts of fancy things. Actually, not really fancy things, really simple things, really.
That's actually a concept I hadn't heard before.
There's some really cool videos online. I can shoot you some links to some cool ways, some people that have really kind of opened up my eyes in the way that you can compose with noise.
Excellent. I'd love to see it. That'd
Definitely.
be great. Now, do we have any questions from the audience tonight about Musicalfungus' set?
So I just want to know about the thinking behind having separate discrete cases of like all mutable instruments or all make noise, and like what that does for you, like
Instead of like mixing and matching modules, or
yeah, instead of that, and sort of like I guess why you decided to do that, but also like what it ends up sort of doing to your composition.
I guess part of it is just OCD and just wanting a case to be all nice and neat and stuff. But also, I just feel like modules that are made by the same company, even though Eurorack and All Modular is so vast, there's a, and I lost my train of thought here. The question again.
Like how does that affect your composition process?
Yeah. So I find that the modules that are made by the same company, like Make Noise, they all mesh together really, really well. The way that maths interacts with an Optimix, the way that the control voltage, the exponential curve of a maths envelope going into a Make Noise Optimix is just like music to my ears. I can even just ping the Optimix and just get a sine wave out of that. So I really like that modules that are made from the same company really kind of glue each other together, and you get a really nice sound. They play together really well. Eurorack's awesome because you can mix and match and get everything. You can have a case with a module made by a million different companies, and I have a case like that. This middle one is actually just like a hodgepodge of a million things, but this top one is definitely all Mutable Instruments. I don't think I'll ever put another module in there. And I find that when I sit down to that particular Make Noise system or that particular Mutable system, my brain instantly goes to a certain way that I want to compose, versus using a hodgepodge system. I can sit there for hours and be like, ooh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. But for some reason, when I'm on a inclusive system, I feel like my brain just clicks a little bit better. I can mentally make connections between the modules a little better, and that might go into, like I said, the way that the modules play together. They just seem to work really well. It was also something that I heard Alessandro Cortini talk about years ago. He does the same thing. He makes a case with just all Make Noise or all verbose or all this, because he really likes the way that those modules play together. So kind of just took along the same philosophy.
Have any other questions tonight for Musicalfungus?
At one point in the set, you had it sounded like you high-passed the entire master bus, and I was wondering if you could talk about kind of how you did your signal routing after sound generation, like.
Yeah. So in the Make Noise case, 4 oscillators go into 2 Optimixes, so essentially 4 Optimix channels. And I use those 4 Optimix knobs as my main mixer. So that Make Noise system is essentially a 4-voice system. It's 4 oscillators, 4 envelopes from the 2 maths, and then 4 gates from the Optimixes. So after the sound goes into the Optimix, what I was actually doing, which I don't think you can see very well, but in this case, there's a Make Noise MMG, and that's what was high-passing everything. So I had both voices from a DPO, 2 separate STOs going into 4 Optimix channels, and those 4 Optimix channels, using the auxiliary sum, are bussed together, and then that bus went into a mod to mix. And I use the mod to mix as a 2-channel mixer. So everything from this went into 1 channel of a mod to mix, and everything from the bottom case, in this case, went into 1 channel of the mod to mix. And that's how I crossfaded between the 2 systems. All of that then went through the MMG, and the MMG was like a final out for everything, because it has a really cool modeless switch between low pass and high pass, so you can use control voltage to go between the 2 types. And so I was just using random voltage going into that mode selection, and at one point I just turned that off and high passed the whole thing. What's that? Yeah.
Another question?
Just to follow up, where did the herb reverb sit in that chain?
The herb verb, everything went through the. I'd have to look, actually, to be honest. Let me take a quick look. So it was actually mod to mix. The final from the mod to mix of the 2 systems then fed into herb verb and in mono, because it only has a mono input, and then the stereo output from herb verb fed into the stereo output on the CV bus in the Make Noise case. Yeah. So I guess technically the herb verb was really the final out, because the MMG fed into the herb verb as well.
Awesome. Can you just maybe rudimentarily talk to us about like how you go about writing a melody? Not like explicitly.
I just turn knobs, and
I
if
just
it
turn
sounds
knobs.
good, then I keep it. Quantizers are key.
Okay.
Definitely use a quantizer.
Do you have something usually in mind, like in your head? You're going with like a modality or anything?
I just kind of pick a mode or scale for that night and just kind of work. Like tonight, I was working in Aeolian. So,
Aeolian? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so everything was just going through an Aeolian scale. But I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because it's. I want to say it's just easy and I just do it, but I'm sure it's obviously much more complex than that. So
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like pretentious or something, but it just pops out of my head. I don't really have an answer for that.
Okay.
And I found that I've played so many instruments throughout my life, but for some reason a sequencer, knobs on a sequencer, a 16-step sequencer is just where I find home. That's for some reason, out of all the instruments I play, a 16-step sequencer, my brain just clicks and I can make the melodies. I was also, though, one thing that was really helping with the melody on this is I was utilizing a shift register. So there was one set of CV there was actually 3 separate sequencers that I was using, and those 3 separate sequencers were feeding into a shift register, and that shift register was feeding a cascaded version of that sequence to the 4 voices. Very similar to like the way you would sing a canon. And they were delayed each note was delayed by 4 clock pulses. So every voice was getting the same melody, but 4 clock pulses behind the previous one. Yeah.
2 questions. One, what are your musical influences? And 2, on the more technical side, so you said you had one system on top and one down below. Are they each kind of independent? I mean, I understand that there's some...
Yeah, totally independent.
So you had different sequences kind of going up top and then different ones going below, and you could kind of cross...
Yes, I guess I was using 4 sequencers tonight. Yeah. So there's one sequencer in here. I was actually using Stages by Mutable Instruments and sending 4 steps of that into marbles to quantize it. And that was the sequencer for this. The sequencer for the bottom section, though, is Renee, which I was using as actually 4 separate 4-step sequencers. So I can play a 4-step sequence and then jump up a row and have a separate 4-step sequence. And I was using pressure points to also give me 2 more rows of 4 pitch CVs. And all of those were being fed into a Doepfer sequential switch. And I could use pressure points. Every time I touch it, I can produce a gate. And I was using that gate to cycle between those sequencers, similar to the way traffic control would work on train tracks. I was sending one sequence to the shift register, which then sent it out, cascaded to everything. But at the touch of pressure points, I can change that sequence to a different sequencer, and then goes through the whole chain and goes to the shift register as well. Does that answer that question? But musical influences, anything that sounds good. Electronic, though. I'm really, really into a lot of the original old things. One of my favorite composers of all time is Laurie Spiegel. If you're not familiar with her, I would check her out. Her album Patchworks is entirely what improvised everything I just did tonight is 100%. If I had never heard Patchworks by Laurie Spiegel, I wouldn't be doing this right now. The way that she juggles melodies the way that I like to, and utilizing multiple voices with the same melody but different gating patterns is something that she does as well. Granted, she was doing it on an IBM computer in 1975, so a totally different concept to the way that she was composing, but the end product is very, very influential to me. And also, like I mentioned earlier, Alessandro Cortini, everything he does is super, super influential to me. Thank you. Yeah. But also everything outside of electronic music too. Any sort of music also influences me in the realm of electronic music.
Yes, I've actually. You've been playing a lot of guitar lately, haven't you?
Yeah. I don't ever mix the two though. Guitar is something totally separate. That was the first instrument I guess trumpet was the first instrument I learned, but guitar is just kind of my go-to kind of security blanket. So I think I've once plugged a guitar into like Clouds, I think one time. Actually, no, I mic'd a banjo and played banjo into Clouds. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't normally mix non-electronic music with my electronic music. Similar to the way I don't like using samples with it. I really just like to use sine waves. So.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the audience today? Excellent. Chris, thank you so much again for
Of
playing
course.
tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It was a fantastic set, and from what I get from your set tonight, I really and actually all the music I've heard from you, within the melodies, I really hear a lot of Tangerine Dream.
They're another big influence of mine as well, too, especially with the way I sequence. They do very interesting things with their sequences. They do a lot of phase sequencing with multiple sequencers with different amounts of steps. That's something that I also mess around with as well. So
Yeah, I definitely hear it.
I hear it as well now that you mention it. So. Yeah, Phaedra by Tangerine Dream. If you haven't heard Phaedra,
so good.
go listen to that.
It's really good stuff. Chris, thanks again so much. Everybody, Musicalfungus.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks, everybody. We had a great show tonight. We've got Piqued is actually going to be doing a little giveaway on our Instagram account on Piqued SF. We're going to be doing a little giveaway for some Landscape FM all flesh units, which are really great. They're really fun. I've been playing around with them at home myself. They're really fun. I'm actually working on designing a patch based on doing that, which is basically using your body as a patch cable, which you can use more than just your fingers. You can do your both hands to trigger almost anything. And in certain sections, you can actually use these things as almost a percussion, which is really, really fun for really improv and on-the-fly beats. So thanks again for everybody for coming out. Musicalfungus, you can find him on Instagram. He's on Bandcamp. You can find Anto Leon on Instagram and Bandcamp. And I've got an interview with Anto Leon. And in the future, we'll be having an interview with Musicalfungus on North Beats Podcast. Thank you very much.